As a landlord, a lot of times things feel urgent, right? And why is that? There's usually a couple reasons. One is, as a landlord, you have a ton of responsibilities, right? Ongoing at the same time. So too many responsibilities at once. And then, a lot of times small issues start feeling like bigger risk items, correct? So there's those couple bullet points right there. And then the difference between, like an urgent item and an important item, right? What is that? In plain talk, quick talk, urgent feels loud, right? It feels loud. And then important things are actually things that can help protect you long term. So think about those two different things: urgency versus what's actually important. Those things can usually calm your mind if you consider that. Uncertainty, of course, creates stress, and then that usually leads to bad decisions as a landlord. Not knowing consequences does create extra pressure on you as well. And then that pressure ends up leading to usually rushed choices. So you got to be careful of that as a self-managing landlord if you decide to manage yourself, of course. Common moments where landlords rush when they shouldn't are tenant messages, right? You're very reactive. You just respond right there, and instead of taking the time to pause. Maintenance request, that's a big one. A tenant sends in a maintenance request, and of course you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, this is going to cost me more money. What are they complaining about now? But you just need to pause, check the maintenance request, and then do the next step appropriately. And then conflict situations, right? That's a big one. And it kind of goes back to the tenant messages part we just mentioned a couple seconds ago. So conflict situations where a tenant and you aren't seeing eye to eye, or the tenant just isn't understanding something. Maybe you aren't understanding something, and then sometimes that leads to a hot battle via messages, or start having endless phone calls back to back. Those are never good situations, right? So those are common moments when landlords rush things, and they absolutely shouldn't. So take a second to pause if those things start popping up. Why slowing down actually protects your cash flow kind of goes back to taking a pause, right? So it ends up you make fewer mistakes when you slow down, and you usually make better decisions, and those better decisions end up compounding over time, and it leads to a better and a friendlier landlord-tenant situation and relationship, which is the way it should be, right? Landlords have their obligations to fulfill, and tenants have their obligations to fulfill, and they're usually laid out in a structured lease agreement. So good relationship on landlord-tenant situations is what we're shooting for, right? How clarity reduces long-term problems. Clarity, of course, comes from calm thinking, and that usually prevents things escalating to a point where they should never get to. Clear systems, of course, reduce stress. So you got to have a clear system in place as a landlord for different items. For all items, really, you need to have a system. So systems are what work and is what keep the tenant-landlord relationship the way it should be. You take care of the tenant taking care of your property, all things are good, right? So better systems. You want to have better systems. Closing reminder on all this stuff real quick. Calm decisions beat fast decisions. That's basically what we're talking about. So always take a second to pause. Even if you think, and maybe you know the answer right away, when a tenant sends in something, you say, all right, I know how to handle it. It's always good still to just pause maybe and just think, is this actually the right way to do it and to handle it? That usually leads to, again, better relationship and better decisions when you pause. And pausing also allows you to think clearer, right? It allows you to think more clearly about what you need to do moving forward for whatever the item is, whether it's a maintenance issue, a tenant problem, maybe they're complaining about their neighbor, or there's a dog or a pet situation, lease violation, whatever it is. Take a second to pause, think about it, and then also put in place systems so that you can end up in a better position.